up in McKinney, this is According to Callus. It is episode 735. Coming to you on a Thursday. Today's episode will be entitled Trump Takes Action. We'll see how many downloads I get with that. Before we get there, though, again, just as a reminder, the show needs your help. Like, share, subscribe, follow. Join me on your favorite podcatcher, right? Amazon, Spotify, Google Play, Apple iTunes, Podbean, TuneIn, Stitcher. They're all out there. You can find me. It's not that hard, according to Callus. And on your social media of choice, I have a page in the group on Facebook. I drop in at MeWe. I am a pro at Gab. And I have an X presence. But there's only so much time in the day. And as I said, there's a time for everything. And that time is changing. And it always has changed and always will. But you just need to be aware of what's going on. So, without further ado, here we go. All right. So, from the onset, I've tried to make this program, my time, if you will, largely locally based, right? Because we can't change or fix anything that goes on in D.C. We just can't. You and I, we're not there. I mean, even the Donald, for all of his power and wisdom, can only do so much. And honestly, most of it's going to be temporary, whatever he actually accomplishes. Now, it could be temporary for 4 years. It could be temporary for 20 years to undo whatever he's done. But it's temporary. At the state capitol, we have some input, but not very much. And quite frankly, our leadership, our party leadership, which has essentially run the state of Texas for 30 years plus at this point, has been incrementally moving our way. Now, most of us are not enthusiastic about the time and scope involved with doing this, but it's hard to deny that most of the major wins have gone our way. That doesn't mean it's perfect. It doesn't mean that maybe it's enough, but we have to acknowledge a win is a win. And I think my brothers and sisters in the grassroots, quite frankly, are just growing tired of waiting. They're exasperated that they deliver every statewide house, the vast majority of the elected offices are ours, and we can't get the things done that we want done. Now, some of that is undoubtedly because they don't want to deliver it all right away, and then we wise up real quick that we just don't need them anymore, right? They want to string it along and drag out the process as long as possible. And let's face it, they all make money doing that. And not the way you think, and it's not a criminal accusation. It's just, it's in their best interest to take their sweet time. The powers that be, I mean. Don't be bitter. Don't be whiny. That's just the way it is. But as long as it keeps moving, as long as they keep giving us just enough, we're going to feel obligated to send them back so that they can deliver just a little bit more. We accept that. We don't necessarily like it, but we accept it and understand that's what we're dealing with. But on local things, we can have an immediate impact. We can change the outcome. We can make a difference. Case in point, in my own hometown of McKinney, I have a former state rep who is running to be mayor. Now, I don't know for 100% certainty that he's going to win before going to a runoff. I don't even know that he would win the runoff. Not 100%. Am I confident? Absolutely. Do I think he's the best candidate? Absolutely. But are the wheels going to come off in the world end if he doesn't win? Well, obviously the answer is no. It's not like the guy that's running, that's, I guess, technically the other front runner, is a leftist, socialist, progressive, communist. None of that. No. And anybody who would say that, they're being intellectually dishonest. Does it mean he's a better candidate? No, absolutely not. Does it mean that there are some significant flaws there that probably need to be addressed if he should ever run for office again? Yeah, that's a fair statement. But I can honestly say that my former state rep that's running to be mayor, I wouldn't say he's without fault, but he's without any serious shortcomings. He is just one heck of a solid guy, right? The only detraction I had when he was a state rep, I have told him, and I have told many other people, is actually his biggest asset in a municipal race. And that is, he's just such a nice guy. He's not confrontational, and he wants to hear people out, and he wants to respect everybody. Now, I want my state rep to be a little more aggressive. I want my state rep to, hold the line and be a little cantankerous. That's what I want out of a state rep. I don't want that out of a municipal candidate. I want a municipal candidate that's going to listen to everybody, that's going to be gracious, that's going to be patient, that's going to hear everything out. Now, because it's a, let's say, quote unquote, nonpartisan race, that is an advantage. It's a huge advantage. And I'm very grateful that he has stepped up to the plate. But we also have an at-large seat, and this is often overlooked because the at-large seat is elected by the same group of people typically that elect the mayor. That is the entirety of the city as a whole. And again, this is a situation where, oh boy, if I would have just known a few weeks sooner. But we've got two guys that are ostensibly well-funded. Some are, well, let's just say, some have different opinions of both those individuals, but at least in theory, they're the front runners. Now, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but they have the money, they have some experience, and they certainly have some of the powers that be backing them. But into the mix is my friend Brian Magnuson. Now, when I say friend, I can say that we have shared a meal or two together. We are always friendly when we see each other. I trust the guy completely. He's another military vet who actually saw deployment overseas. I did not. He is Army, so I'll have to forgive him for that as a Navy guy. But as solid as they come, as even keel as they come, and quite frankly, he, like Scott Sanford, is extremely gracious, extremely patient, hears everybody out, treats everybody with respect, and quite frankly can reach across, quote unquote, the aisle that allegedly doesn't exist in municipal elections. Now, the key point in the at-large race that is the distinguishing characteristic here is there are 5 people running, and of the 5 people running, one of them has run for the seat before. And the one that ran for the seat before is Brian Magnuson. And the one that ran for the seat before got 40+%, or I should say roughly 40% of the vote, against a incumbent who was fairly well known and, I guess, well funded. And he did that because he reached out to everybody, he treats everybody with respect, and he's consistent. Morally and ethically consistent. So, the key issue, the defining issue this cycle is undoubtedly the airport and what the city is doing without regard to what the people that live in the city believe about the airport. Now, I won't claim to speak for Brian. He is his own man. You should go check him out. You can find him online. You can find him on social media. Brian Magnuson for McKinney, I believe, is the correct address. He has consistently said, I have questions about the airport. I'm not sure we're getting the best deal. I'm not sure that what we're doing is what's best for the city of McKinney. That's not saying I hate the airport. That's not saying that I don't think we need an airport. It's just saying if we're going to have an airport, we probably ought to make sure that we actually benefit from it, meaning we, the people of the city of McKinney. Which, quite frankly, has always been my stance. All the way back in 2019, when I did my Don Quixote run for also an at-large seat in the city of McKinney, I talked about a number of issues, and that was one of them. Hey, we're going to get an airport. I get it. It's going to happen, whether I like it or not, which I have at my own nuanced view of the airport. But the thing is, I think we have to ask questions. We have to be certain that we're getting the best deal possible, and we have to be transparent about what we're doing and who's benefiting and what the costs are. And we just don't get that out of the current situation. And I'm not confident that it's going to significantly change unless we're successful and we get Scott Sanford elected as the mayor. And quite frankly, the mayor alone, while they may dictate the agenda, does not change the outcome of the individual votes on the city council. You need at least one other person. And in my opinion, that person is Brian Magnuson. Now, I know there's at least one more race that's contested, and there's a very obvious choice. If you're a party person here, we've got a obvious declared Republican person running against a known Democrat. And if that's the defining order for you, if that's all that matters, well, then it's an obvious choice, right? You've got the incumbent, Jeray Feltus, who I think is, quite frankly, a very wonderful and well-accomplished person based upon all that I've ever heard about her. I don't know her personally, won't claim otherwise. And from what I can tell, she's not a leftist, progressive, socialist, which, I mean, as a Democrat, that's saying something in today's day and age. So, but if that's all that it's concerned about, you do have another choice. Her name's Tammy Warren. And again, check these people out on your own. Do your own research. To me, it's quite clearly a way to turn the corner here in McKinney. I know there are a whole lot of folks in the city of McKinney that are not super political. They're not overly partisan. I get it. I respect it. I am not. I am partisan. I'm very much driven by my political theory, my preferences, but I also strive to always respect my principles, and I like to respect everybody else's principles. So you can say that it's nonpartisan, but it is. You can say that it shouldn't matter, but it does. And in the city of McKinney, if you want to take a pause, if you want to think about what is the best outcome, are we truly getting the best deal both on the airport and our continued development? Because you can't stop development. It's always going to happen. Expansion's always going to happen. But can we do it better? Can we give it a little thought? Can we maybe have somebody that's outside of I want to be careful how I phrase this. The group of people that are going to benefit the most, read that how you want, by continued development and growth in the city of McKinney. Can we get somebody in there that isn't going to directly benefit from what happens? Why does that matter? Because you want somebody to represent you and me, we the people, that can say objectively, yeah, you know what, that's a good deal. We, the city of McKinney, we're going to benefit from that. Or, you know what, I understand why you folks think this is a good idea, but maybe this isn't in the best interest of the city of McKinney. Maybe this isn't what's best for the residents of McKinney. Perhaps we ought to let them have a look at this. Perhaps we ought to listen to what they have to say. Now, I have been to a couple of city council meetings, and I've been to a few school board meetings in my time. Do I spend a lot of time there? No. Why? Because most of it's theater, right? These folks know what they're going to do before they ever show up. They have their people there planted to come speak on the issue that they support. And I get it. And to a degree, I appreciate it. It's no different in any other political theater, right? A good chunk of all politics is theater. But I can tell you, I will personally state that the Scott Sanford that I know doesn't feel that way. The Brian Magnuson that I know doesn't feel that way. They want to legitimately hear from the people that are most affected. They want genuine input, regardless of what letters after their name, regardless of who they voted for in 2024. They want to hear people out. And honestly, that's all you can ask for in a political situation. To be heard out. To be trusted with a voice, right? To be respected, to be heard. So, look, you're going to go to the ballots here in May in McKinney. Those are my two wholehearted endorsements. And again, I know Tammy. I met Jeray. I don't say I know her. I can see where there would be some differences of opinion there. And again, I'm a good Republican. So I'm going to tell you the Republican in this race is Tammy Warren. And I would recommend you vote for her if you want a Republican. So that's my nuance. But look, It's very clear. If you want a more cautious, a more careful deliberation on what's going on in the city of McKinney, that's your option. And just in case you think I'm dunking on people because they're Democrats, it's not lost on me that Justin Beller is running unopposed. And there's a reason for that, in my opinion, because regardless of whatever letter he's got after his name, he legitimately listens to his people. He takes the time to sit down with them. He hears them out. And anytime I've ever seen the guy, he's been respectful to everybody around him. And I'll say the same about Patrick Loitier, because I've met Patrick a number of times. I've had some long conversations with him, and he's kind of followed suit with Justin Beller. And honestly, again, notwithstanding whatever letter might be after their name or what they might vote on this, that, or the other thing, that is what I want. That is what I want to see. And I say that as a partisan. I say that as somebody that wears my politics and my principles on my sleeve. I appreciate that immensely. It would be my sincere hope that whoever wins the Warren Feltus race, that they would follow suit. I know personally that Brian Magnuson already sits down and meets with people from time to time. And I know Scott Sanford did that as his state rep, and I have no doubt that he will do that as mayor. We have a great opportunity to turn the corner, where we're not berating people, talking down to them, and abusing them because they have a difference of opinion. I try very hard personally, both in my real life and on this podcast, to not just focus on calling names and not denigrating people because they have a difference of opinion with me. I know plenty of people that don't agree with me on any number of subjects, and I just don't understand the world that we live in. So now as I pivot, right, we're going to go talk about the guy who, quite frankly, won his election because he wasn't afraid to call a spade and make some mean tweets. All right. The Donald. Now, I've had more than one person ask me about why do I refer to Donald Trump as the Donald? Well, one, I think it's funny. And two, the reason I think it's funny is his first wife, Ivana, said that it kind of annoyed him. He wasn't a big fan of it. But I think she initially meant it as a term of endearment. Now, that may have morphed over time, and it may not have been any endearment at some point in the future. But I've known about this guy and read about him since at least the mid-'80s. So I have a certain amount of affection for our New York friend, right? Not my style, not my vibe, if you will, to quote my Gen Alpha and Zoomers out there. But you got to give mad respect to the guy. Okay, so his big announcement were reciprocal tariffs. Now, I come out of a liberty background. I kind of was a non-capital L libertarian for many, many years, right? A small L libertarian. As a liberty guy, I joined the Republican Party. I am a Ron Paul guy. I don't generally think that tariffs are a net positive, free markets, that kind of thing. But we don't live in a perfect world. We don't live in a fair world. And if we look at trade as the prisoner's dilemma, and if you're not familiar with the prisoner's dilemma, I recommend you take time and you go look into it. We are getting tariffed by every other country out there. They are handicapping our ability to produce things. Now, to a degree, I understand that. I think there's a utilitarian value to getting money for your government based upon the imports, right? And if that's all it was, right? And I'm 100% behind that. In fact, that's where I would deviate, if you will, from big L and little L libertarians or free marketers in general. I think a 5, 10, 15% tariff on anything and everything that comes in to the United States is fair game. It is a revenue generating tariff. We're not looking to punish anybody. We're not looking to, handicap anybody that's necessarily producing anything overseas. And we're certainly not looking to punish another country. We're just taxing things that you're sending here to be sold here. and at a relatively low rate. Now, it's always said that we, the buyers, ultimately pay that price. Yeah, to a degree, that's true. That is. And I think Trump's argument is a whole lot of these countries are taxing us or tariffing us well north of 25%, which, by the way, 25% and less is considered a revenue-based tariff. And he's instituted what's called reciprocity. If you tariff us at 60%, we're going to tariff you back. If you tariff us at 25%, we're going to tariff you back. It's, we can call it a trade war, and maybe that's appropriate, but all these countries have been at war with us, whether we want to admit it or not, for a long, long time. If you don't produce anything in your own country, you are subject to the whims of those other countries. If for no other reason you want to look at national security, the fact that we don't make chips here in the United States, and by that I mean silicone chips that can control everything we use, is a huge problem. The fact that we don't produce steel at sufficient quantities to build a lot of things is a significant problem. The fact that we have offshored most of our automotive component and manufacturing processes is a problem, because the automotive manufacturers were the arsenal of democracy back in World War II, right? It's very difficult for me to understand why you can look at what's been going on at Boeing and consider that a good thing. It's very difficult for me to understand how you can overlook the fact that we used to have a place called Northrop. We used to have a place called Grumman. Now it's Northrop Grumman, if I'm not mistaken. We used to have a place called General Dynamics. There used to be both a Lockheed and a Martin. Now it's Lockheed Martin. And then a piece of Martin got spun off and became something else. I am not a huge fan of the military-industrial complex, but I will tell you, we're going to be in big trouble if we can't produce things here. I'm even less a fan of BlackRock and at all, right? BlackRock's just the easiest one to pick on because I think they're the biggest one, but I think State Street and one other company are in there, Vanguard. They control a whole lot of money. And the money they control is actually a lot of retirement funds. And those retirement funds are from people like you and me. And all they care about is making money. And quite frankly, that is their job, to take care of those retirees. But again, if you can't produce things in the United States, if you can't make things in the United States, if you can't mine in the United States, we're in trouble. We're going to be in deep trouble. Now, whether you like Donald Trump or not, he's accurately described and defined what's going on here. We don't produce what we need to produce. Now, whether or not you think it's good or bad that a union worker is making $30 an hour or whatever the magic number is for you, if that's what the market will bear when it's an even playing field, so be it. I don't begrudge somebody that wants to be able to make enough money to take care of their family. We all want that. We should all respect that. Sometimes the market doesn't bear that. I don't expect somebody that works at McDonald's flipping burgers and deep frying fries is going to make enough money to take care of his family. However, the general manager or the owner ought to, in my opinion. But that can't happen if there aren't enough people making money to continue to do that. And we've talked about for decades that, robots are going to replace this and, software is going to replace that. That's true to a degree. But again, if you're not producing things, if you're not, extracting things to build things, what are you doing? There is a national security aspect to everything that goes on. And I think, again, whether you like him or not, Donald Trump has accurately defined what the problem is. Now, here's where it gets dicey. There are economic consequences to what has happened. The stock market is likely to be all over the place. People are going to lose money in the short run. People will possibly even lose jobs in the short run. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Donald Trump has, 14 months, I guess, before the midterm elections. It is my sincere hope that most of this bumpy ride is sorted out by then. And 3 years from now, we're going to be looking at a new presidential election. And I would sincerely hope and believe that most all the rough stuff is going to be behind us and we'll be on the upward trajectory. And it's a question of, are we going to continue to do what's best for these United States? Are we going to continue to put America first? Or are we going to promptly sell ourselves out again? It's not a mystery. And I want to just take another moment. Again, I don't necessarily want to spend every episode talking about national things, but we have to understand the bigger picture that's going on here. You have a single federal judge that can overrule what the president has done, at least until it goes to appeal court. You know, the Court of Appeals, their rulings, their opinions are only in effect in their sections, right? The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. That is only binding in the Fifth Circuit. So how is it a single federal judge can make something that's nationwide? That's wrong. It's odd. I understand it. And I guess to a degree, it's not the end of the world. But much like Andrew Jackson allegedly said, yeah, the court's made its opinion known. Now let them try and enforce it. There's supposed to be tension between the bodies of government, right? You want the legislative tugging with the executive, and you want both of them reining in the judicial abuse. The judiciary was designed to be the weakest. The judiciary was supposed to just provide guide rails, not step over and abuse their power, which anytime that you're making, quote unquote, a ruling to prevent anything from happening nationwide, yeah, that's an overstep of power. I don't care what anybody thinks or says. That's out of line. But what isn't out of line is state sovereignty. What is appropriate is an individual state saying, yeah, we're not going to participate. That we don't agree with you on that, federal government. And I wish we had more states willing to do that. I wish we would have states, stand up. The current president is not perfect. He's going to screw up. He's going to do things that you don't like. The previous president did it, and the ones before him have done it. They're all guilty of it. They violate the Constitution. They do things that you don't like. I would imagine that California is going to hate everything that's happened since January. And they loved the previous 4 years, and they hated the 4 years before that. And by that, I mean just the majority of people in California. And the same could be said for Washington, Oregon, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, right? That's fine. That's the way it's supposed to work in a federal republic. Right now, what we're watching play out in my home state of Wisconsin, they approved a voter ID program. A significant change to the law as a constitutional amendment. Now, what's scary to me is their current Supreme Court in Wisconsin may choose to try and override or declare it unconstitutional when it's a constitutional amendment. So I'm not quite sure how they can do that. And I would fully expect the state legislator would tell them to go pound sand. They don't have that authority. But be that as it may, at the same time they did that, allegedly, we watched them elect a leftist, progressive, socialist, Democrat to the Supreme Court. So I'm not really sure how that played out. And all the people I know that are left of center are thrilled to death. Oh, Wisconsin did the right thing. They put a leftist in power. Well, obviously they don't understand what the true nature of the courts are. What the purpose of the courts are is to understand the law and to adjudicate things according to the law. Not make up law, not push back on things, not make things up, not rewrite the law from the bench. That's not the role of a judge. Whether they're making decisions that I like or not, that's not their role. That is the legislature's role. The executive branch is supposed to carry out those laws to the best of their ability. And the judicial system's supposed to say, hey guys, yeah, that law, that really doesn't work with this constitutional constraint, or you've got two laws that are in contradiction to each other. You probably ought to sort that out. They can put a pause on things. They can ask them to intervene, but they're not supposed to override and overwrite what the law is or what the executive is doing. Yet we watch that happen all the time. Now, Brian McClanahan is correctly, in my opinion, pointed this out many, many times. We have judicial overreach, and we have an executive that behaves like a king, a monarch. I'm not good with either one of those. And I don't care if they've got an R or a D after their name. I don't care if they're generally conservative or if they're leftists. If they're exceeding the authority granted to them by the Constitution, they're wrong. I want them to stop. So I ask you folks, right, you left of center folks up in Wisconsin, are you comfortable with that? That 5 people in robes, or a majority of people in robes in your home state, can tell the entire legislature, indeed even the governor, to go pound sand? No, you're not allowed to do that. Are you really comfortable with that? Now, if they were legitimately abusing power, okay, I could make peace with that. But is that really what the role of the judiciary is? And they have no enforcement mechanism. Now, unfortunately, you guys have a leftist, socialist, progressive governor in Wisconsin. So I don't expect the most. I don't expect the best. And it really should be concerning to you that you couldn't even keep the breweries in town. You lost most of Harley-Davidson. You lost most of Farnschweger. You lost Briggs & Stratton. You're in the process of losing every brewery in the state. And you can't seem to figure out why that is. It's bad policy. Now, to be fair, they made their own mistakes. The union certainly didn't do them any favors either. But this is supposed to be a team effort. Now, my new home, right, the Promised Land, Texas, we do a lot of things right. We do a lot of things right. But the one thing we can't do is to get our governor to realize that he is the leader of the state. And the state has a certain amount of sovereignty. And the state has the ability to say, yeah, you may be President Biden, but we're going to protect our border anyway. Hey, we're grateful that you're here, Donald Trump, and you're doing these things right, but we're not going to allow these various other agencies to do these things. We're not on board with that. We're a sovereign state. We are part of the body that's supposed to dictate what you as feds can do, but we can't even get our guy to do that. Now, to a degree, Florida, again, still leads the way here, or perhaps Oklahoma, for that matter. And you can say what you want, but a lot of these leftist states, Colorado, Washington, they took the lead on this. Now, for things that I'm not necessarily enthusiastic about, but they told the feds, well, yeah, you can make your law, but we're not going to enforce it. In fact, in our state, these things are legal, and this is what we're going to do. Insofar as that they are truly an intrastate thing, more power to them. I don't understand why we can't get that to happen here in Texas. Whole cloth. We're a sovereign state. We need to act like it. So, to tie this all together, I have municipal elections playing out right here in McKinney. I've told you what I thought about that. We got the Donald L. Trumpster. He just laid down the law yesterday. Good for him. You want to play trade war with the United States? Well, we're going to start shooting back, metaphorically speaking. We're going to make a fight out of this, and it's going to cost you. You come for the king, you better not miss. I mean, he is speaking softly and using a big stick, right? I'm just saying, this is a good thing. Yes, it's going to hurt. Yes, there's going to be some pain. There's not anything that you can do that doesn't have a cost. But I am certain, coming through on the other end, it will be a net positive. And lastly, for those of you out there that are worried about what Donald Trump is doing, you're worried about what the federal government's doing, please, 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 please remember there is something called state sovereignty. And if you're in a state and you and the majority of your state just don't like these things, you have a right and you have a duty to push back. You have to be willing to say that. But you have to also accept when the shoe is on the other foot, which it may be 3 years from now, it might be 7 years from now, it might be, 11 years from now. The other states have a right to do that. You don't get to just get one or two people that have a black robe, make quote-unquote law for the entire country. That's not the way it works. In a federal republic, the states are sovereign. They choose to work with the federal government or ignore the federal government. That's the way it's supposed to work. And in case you forgot, our very own people on our side, routinely say that we want to respect people wanting a sovereign government. We want to respect the people to have a right for their form of representation. I respect what the people in California want to do to themselves. I respect what the people in Oregon or Washington want to do to themselves. I respect what the people in Illinois have done to themselves. Same thing with New York, New Jersey, and Massachusetts. But I'm asking you, I'm begging, I'm pleading, keep your Yankee selves under control and let Texans do what Texans want. Let the people in Oklahoma do what people in Oklahoma want to do. Let Florida be Florida. Let the people of Ohio and Kansas and North Dakota figure out what's best for them. Somebody in a black robe cannot and should not be in a position to think that they can dictate what's best for an entire country. I'm not comfortable with the idea with 535 people in Washington, D.C. doing it. I'm certainly not going to be okay with one person in a black robe making that decision. Again, remember, you don't have to love Donald Trump. Donald Trump loves his country. He's doing what he thinks is best. We're going to have to roll the dice here and see how this works out. But what's going on in your state, you can. You can have some influence. You can have some control. And what's going on in my city, we can influence that. I can influence that. You can influence that. What's going on in your city, in your town, in your school board, that's the first thing you should be involved with. That should be the most important thing because that's the thing that affects you on a daily basis. Now, are the tariffs going to hurt? Yeah, maybe a little bit, but you have zero control over that. There's nothing that can be done. And oh, by the way, those countries have been messing with us for decades, and we're just now getting into the game. So be patient, keep your powder dry, and let's see what happens now that Trump has taken action. And with that, this has been According to Callus, and I will see you on the other side.
TexianPride.com is the destination for Texans who want to show off their love for Texas. We don't settle for mediocre. Our shirts are made from 100% high-quality athletic cotton. They're cool, comfortable, and designed to fit and flatter any body type. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Visit TexianPride.com for your next stylish Texas tee.